Is it just me or does someone hear something like Darth Vader in the background?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's 5 o'clock.
Okay, Preethi, almost 3 o'clock. Let's see.
Where'd Neil go?
Oh, I can see him.
Oh, I can't on my screen. Oh well.
Oh, if you hit the little blue arrow where all 4 of us are at, then I'll show.
Oh, yep. Okay. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Preethi, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah. Hi, my name is Preethi. I'm a student at the University of Chicago, and today I'll be your moderator for our panel for college admissions. But before we start, I want to introduce our sponsor, CEO of UCEazy, Vinny Gupta.
Thank you very much, Preethi. Give me 1 second. I want to start sharing my screen here. Okay, while I'm bringing up these slides, can I ask the audience to please start responding to the poll questions? Okay, so it seems that there is some issue in bringing up the slides here. So I'm just going to talk to it. So welcome everyone to our ongoing webinar series. My name is Vinny Gupta, and I am a co-founder of UCEazy. Before I hand you over to our student panel today, these are all students from University of Chicago, and one of them, Preethi Raju, would be moderating this webinar for you. So before they do that, I just wanted to give you a quick introduction into who is UCEazy and why do we do these webinars and other similar things. So UCEazy stands for University and College Admissions Made Easy. Even though we have UC in our name, we are not only about University of California, we actually support colleges nationwide. I am a first-generation immigrant, and so is my wife, and so is the UCEazy co-founder. And the inspiration behind UCEazy was that when we went through the college admissions process for our children, the whole thing was completely overwhelming and highly stressful. So we decided to start a company that would make college admissions easy for all families, regardless of their financial background, and make the whole experience less stressful. Now, how do we do that? We have 3 different solutions. So if you go to our site, UCEazy.com, what you would see on the site is 3 different solutions. The first is educational events like the ones that we're talking about today. The second one is that we have something called UCEazy Union. So for those of you who can go to our site now, if you click on Union, then that is an online network of highly qualified college admissions experts that we have handpicked through an extremely rigorous admissions process who provide consultation to families over online video. And the way the pricing works is that you can schedule time with them hourly, or you can buy a block of hours based upon your child's grade. The second thing is called the toolbox. And as the name indicates, the toolbox is a collection of tools These are essentially web applications that provide simple guidance for different aspects of the college admissions process. For example, for California applicants, which University of California or California State University offer the major that I want to do? Or how do I compute my UC GPA? Or what are the key dates in the college admissions process through a tool called the Organizer? And that is completely free for every family, every school. So with that quick introduction, I'm going to invite Preethi to come back and introduce herself and moderate the panel.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. Hi, again, I'm Preethi. I'm a rising third year or junior at the University of Chicago. And before I introduce myself further or the other panelists, I want to go into what is the University of Chicago. Maybe some of you haven't heard of it before. However, it's one of the top ranked colleges in the nation, ranked number 4 along with Stanford and Columbia. It's one of the top ranked in the world. We've had a lot of Nobel Prize winners, field medalists, etc., come from the University of Chicago. It's one of the biggest universities where a lot of famous research has taken place. One of the world's first sustainable nuclear reaction actually took place under our football field. So there's a lot of crazy, there are a lot of crazy research experiments going on even today. Our economics department's really famous. For example, a lot of students major in economics. And so all of our panelists today, including myself, the moderator, we're all from the University of Chicago, and we're happy to share with you our college admissions experience, as well as our University of Chicago experiences. So with that, I'll introduce myself a bit more. So I'm a biology and economics major at the university. I'm hoping to go into medical business or something along that line. And I'm part of student government, Smart Women Securities, Pre-Medical Student Association. I do research here. In my free time, I do a lot of photography and I learn languages. And an interesting fact about myself is that I walked all of Amsterdam in less than a day. It was very fun. And now I'll introduce our panelists, starting with John.
Hi guys, I'm John. I'm a rising second year at UChicago. I'm a neuroscience major, and some activities that I do in my free time are I'm on the track team, I work with bikes, hang out with friends, I take care of my many plants at college, and I am in a value investing club at UChicago.
Thank you. Neil, do you want to kick us off next?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Neil. I am a rising second year student as well, studying economics and statistics. And in some activities that I'm involved with at the University of Chicago, I'm involved with our value investing club, which is called the Blue Chips. I'm involved with a consulting club on campus called Eckert Consulting. I research at the business school, and there's just a lot to get involved with at the University of Chicago. So really enjoying that. In my free time, I like spending time with friends, playing soccer, exploring the city of Chicago, and biking around, and really looking forward to this webinar and what UCEazy has to offer.
Great. And lastly, Melissa.
Hi everybody, my name is Melissa. I'm a rising third year at UChicago, and I'm an economics major. I'm interested in going into academia of some sort, so I spend a lot of my time conducting research in the economics department, largely in behavioral economics, which is really interesting to me. And I'll actually be abroad next year at the London School of Economics. So if you're interested in studying abroad or how to get that done, I'm definitely the person to ask. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. And now that you've heard from all of our accomplished panelists, I'll quickly go over what we're going to talk about today. So as many parents and students out there, you probably all are worried about the college admissions process. It's a really long-winded process, takes a year, and then you go to a college for the next 4 years, which feels like basically the next years of your life. And so we kind of want to break it down to help you understand the process and understand that it's not as bad as it might seem right now. So first, your child or the student, if you're a student listening in, you're going to take a lot of challenging classes, APs, IBs, whatever. You're going to take the SAT or ACT, and you're going to do a lot of extracurriculars. After that, you write the application, send it off to college, and then you wait to hear back. So we're going to ask our panelists right now, What do you think personally is important to focus on for the college admissions process, because it has so many factors? Neil, if you want to go, if you want to start us off with that.
Yeah, so I'd say that the biggest, I mean, there's a ton of things you have to have strong for the application process, ranging from grades to your test scores. But I'd say probably the biggest thing is how are you different than someone else? Because I think what helped me through the process is, imagine if I was an admissions officer looking at a ton of different applications, why should I pick one student over another? So how can you differentiate yourself? How can you kind of not be like everyone else at your school? Obviously, you can be smart like everyone else, but how are you, I guess, more unique in terms of your interests and what you can bring to a college campus? So yeah, that was the biggest thing I considered, is how can I be different than other people?
Great. John, do you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. Colleges really like it when they see a depth of study also. But that's not to say you should only study math in high school or only take as many math classes as you can. They like to see some sort of focus so they can get an idea of who you are as a person. So I think that focus is really important as well.
Great. And Melissa, what do you want to add to this question?
Yeah, I think it's really important when you're applying to colleges. It's kind of easy to get caught up in maybe hearing what everyone else is doing, hearing what classes, what test scores, what extracurriculars. And I think it's important to focus on what exactly you want your college to do for you. So most people, college, you want to get an education. So I think the bottom line, you really want to make sure your grades are solid and you work as hard as you can in school. And once you have that covered, that's when you can really make yourself well-rounded, as Neil was saying. But I think it's important to make sure that you remember that academics are the reason that you're going to college. So you really do want to push yourself, not only to show that you're a good student, but also to make yourself as prepared as possible for when you transition to college.
Definitely, yeah. Both, all three were amazing answers. So throughout this webinar, we'll hear a strong theme of make sure that your application stands out. Really show who you are as an individual on paper. And as John mentioned, whether that's doing some kind of individualized, deeper study, or as Melissa mentioned, really focusing on academics, for example, because that's, I mean, in the end, you are trying to apply to college. Really find out what you're passionate about, and then bring that passion out to admissions officers. They're reading thousands of applications every time the cycle rolls around. So make sure that they can make sure that you stand out and they can remember you. Also, if you have any questions, audience members, please feel free to put them in the Q&A panel. There should be a button at the bottom saying Q&A, or at the top saying Q&A. So feel free to shoot me a question, and I'd be happy to answer that during the panel itself or afterwards if we don't have time to get to it. Great. So with that, I actually want to go to our second question. What kind of extracurricular activities did our panelists get involved in during high school, and how important do they think that those activities were in getting them into college? Let's start with Melissa.
So when I was in high school, I was really involved in swimming. Of course, I was on the swim team and was the captain of that. But kind of, as Neil was saying before, if you have a passion, you have it, I don't know, involved in other parts of your extracurricular activities. So for example, I was a Girl Scout, and I made sure my Girl Scout Gold Award involved swimming, not only because that made it more enjoyable for me, but also because it kind of completed the story and it was something I thought was fulfilling. But sorry about that, my phone was ringing. So I was involved in swimming, and I kind of made a story of that. And I think that was something that stood out to the admissions officers. You could see a focus in what I was doing, which I think is important.
Great. Okay. And John, what were your extracurricular activities in high school?
I did a lot of stuff with running, actually. I was captain of both the track and cross-country teams, which sort of just arose naturally through being on the teams all 4 years and really investing in them and making a commitment, because I really enjoyed that. And I think if you're passionate about your extracurriculars, you'll naturally rise to leadership positions in them. And I think displaying those leadership positions is something that's really valuable in the admissions process. I also had a farm outside my house where I grew a lot of plants. Yeah.
Great. And okay, Neil, what was your take on this question?
Yeah, so I guess unlike the other two panelists, I didn't really have like one central thing that I was really excited about, and like for a while that was like kind of concerning because I thought it'd be hard to show the admissions team that I was like committed to one thing. But I guess the biggest thing that I took away from like the extracurricular part of the admission process was as long as you can find a way to if you have varied interests, if you can find a way to piece it all together, then I think you have a really compelling admission story. So for example, I was really into our business club on campus, but I was also really into community service through Boy Scouts and student government. So my junior year of high school, I wanted to kind of combine those interests because because that's what I wasn't interested in one or the other. I was interested in both. So I actually created like a microfinance club on our campus where we like basically helped people start their own businesses like across the world. And for that, I felt like I was able to, I guess, blend my two interests together, which was really great for me. But I think looking back at how that affected my college apps, I think that I was able to show admissions officers that, yes, I have like different interests, but I know how to channel all of that into like a certain focus, which I think college is like.
Great, thank you. So, for example, in high school, I did a lot of varsity tennis. I did dance, performed internationally at one point. Also did a lot of research. So I had also very fragmented interests, as Neil mentioned. But I think it's important to piece together your interests and really develop leadership skills, as John mentioned, and also, as Melissa mentioned, really develop some kind of deep passion. So you want to, on your common application, you really can't put more than 10 activities, and you have to put the number of hours you participate in each activity. If you do have more than 10 activities and you're only participating in each one once per week for an hour, it's really not meaningful. Make sure your activities are something that you're passionate about and you believe have meaning to them. So if I'm a college admissions officer and I'm reading it, I want to pick you and take you to my college because I think that you're an amazing person and you can bring something to the college campus. Great. So with that, we'll move on to our next question. So this is a bit of a hard question. How many other schools did you apply to, and how many do you recommend applying to? Let's start off with John.
I ended up applying to 7 schools, I think. So I applied to my local state school, which was in this case UW-Madison, and got in there, and it's a very good state school, and I think there are only a few schools that would have been worth applying to that I would have considered outside of it. So I applied to the University of Chicago, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford as well as Marquette University, which is a local one in my city.
Great. Okay, and would you want it to apply to more? Would you want it to apply less?
Once I got into the University of Wisconsin, I think that my rationale was I would apply to the ones that would take me out of the state, that the cost of going there was worth going out of state. So I think my number was pretty good.
Okay, no, yeah, definitely. And Melissa, how many did you apply to?
So I actually only applied to one school. I applied to the University of Chicago, but I wasn't planning on it. I actually had a very similar rationale to John. I'm from California, as if any of you guys watching the webinar are from California. We have fantastic state schools. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and all 3 of my older siblings went to UC schools just because they're so great. So my rationale was I only really wanted to go out of state or go to a private school if it was really worth the cost. And I really loved the University of Chicago. I visited it when I was, I believe, my junior year. Fell in love with it, so I applied early. And once I got in early, that's before all the applications for other private schools are due. So I didn't apply to any of those. I just decided to do that, and I withdrew all of my UC applications. So kind of different than most people.
Awesome. And Neil, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I actually had a little bit of a longer process, but I guess my logic was similar to the other two. So I applied early to 2 schools. So I applied early to, actually, I guess let me start from the even more beginning, but I always wanted a pretty strong like economics program for undergraduates. So I naturally looked to like the University of Pennsylvania or the University of Chicago, and I applied early to both schools. And then I got in early to the University of Chicago, and I guess my logic, like the other two, was what schools would, like, because college applications take so much time to like write the essays for. So I said, what schools would pull me away from the University of Chicago? And I basically just looked at schools that I thought had comparable economics programs or just had comparable, I guess, undergraduate education programs. And so I was looking at schools like Stanford, Columbia, and I basically then put forward my applications for those. And then at the end of it, I looked at U Chicago, and that was my choice. So I basically tried to limit the number of applications that I had to put out after I applied early.
Definitely, thank you. And just to sum it up, a lot of factors go into deciding what colleges you apply to. A lot of students start with the baseline of state schools. For example, if a lot of you are from California, you'll start with the UCs, UC Berkeley, Davis, etc. But if you're from Wisconsin, there are state schools in every state basically, and you start there because a lot of students get in-state tuition, which is a lot cheaper than out-of-state tuition. However, a lot of students will also look at private versus public colleges, the size of the colleges. Does it have the economics program or business program that I want? And so that's also another important factor to consider. There are also other decision processes such as EA, early action, early decision, regular applications, or scholarships. And so when you're deciding to apply to colleges, remember that each application costs roughly somewhere between $50 and $100. I forget exactly how much. So take that into account. You also have to write essays for each college. A good number that I've heard is between 7 and 15. But take that as you will. Great, and so we'll go to the next question. College essays. So let's start with the Common App. What did you guys write your Common Application essays on, if you remember or want to share it? And how did you decide that topic? Let's start with Melissa.
So as I said before, I was kind of swimming focused. And at first I thought my Common Application essay should be written about my Girl Scout Gold Award and describing that. And then kind of midway towards the end of the summer, I kind of had this realization that I thought a lot of students, as we said, you want to stand out to the college admissions officer. I thought a lot of students are probably writing about their volunteer experiences. So I kind of went out on a limb and I talked about, I had like a really bad minimum wage job working at a kids' beach camp, and I'm a very creative writer, so I kind of did a very alternative approach and decided to make my college admissions essay less of a this is what I've done and more of a creative writing sample. This is probably not the advice I'd give to everyone. Like, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. People at UChicago may have rolled their eyes with my essay. I probably would now after reading it 2 years later. But I think the overall theme of it is to kind of go with your heart and go with what you think you really should be writing about it in your essay, like who you really are. So yeah.
Thank you. That was a really good summary of that. John, do you want to go next and talk us through your essay process?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of pressure, like we've been talking about, to stand out in your application. So people may think that's like going to Thailand or whatever and curing some disease. But let's be real. It's high school. You're probably not going to end up doing that. So I had a pretty normal high school experience, I think, in the Midwest. And I ended up writing about a time in my life when one of my friends' parents got divorced and had to move for their jobs. And he ended up living with me for 2 years. And I wrote about how that changed me. It changed me as a person, and it was a really good experience. And so it was a pretty normal topic, but I wrote about it in a way that I think made me stand out.
Great. And Neil, what did you write about?
Yeah, so kind of like Melissa said, I wanted to, I guess, because I figured in the Common App section, there's a whole section where you talk about what you've done in high school. And I figured I don't want my essay just to be like a reiteration of, oh, I'm so involved in my high school, like I'm so qualified. I wanted to show them oh, like there's a human behind this application. So I talked about like an experience that I had as a child and how that kind of shaped my outlook towards life. Kind of similar to John, like how he had his friend move in after his parents got divorced. So like for me, I talked about like experience I had as a kid and how that shaped my outlook. And then at the very end, just to add context to the essay, I tie that into how that experience drives my I guess my like motivation for whatever I do, and how it made me really want to get involved with community service, which is what I was really involved with in high school. So I gave like an anecdote, and I just kind of rolled with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So the college essay is, as some of our panelists mentioned, really to put a face and emotions on a piece of paper, because the college admissions officer gets a bunch of numbers, a bunch of facts, but they don't really know you. So the essay is a way to really tell your story. A lot of people pick volunteer experiences, community service, something else they're really passionate about. I wrote about dance. Some of the essays are more creative, some are not. I would strongly urge you to go online, maybe check out some possible topics, but also really keep it personal. Write about even something that isn't important, write about it. For example, my brother talked about fixing our refrigerator in the middle of the night. So really anything that resounds with you, just go ahead and write about it. This is a really creative way to tell your story. So yeah, and with that, we'll go into college letter recs. This is another really important part of the application. So I just want to ask our panelists, who wrote them? Who did you ask? What was that like? Were you really nervous that they were going to say no, or write things that weren't as flattering about you as you would have hoped? Let's start with John.
Sure. So I asked a teacher that I did particularly well in his class. I asked my history teacher, and I asked a coach on the cross-country team, because those were areas I had really excelled in, and though they weren't the areas I was necessarily considering in majoring at the time, I wasn't going to end up being a D1 runner, and I wasn't going to end up being a history major. I was going to end up being a science major at the college. I still think that those were the teachers that I stood out the most in and could write a really good recommendation. I'd recommend maybe junior year, picking some classes to do really well in, so you can have some of those really good recommendations. Maybe just push yourself every test, or maybe once a semester to blow the curve on a test so your professor remembers you and can write about that.
Great. And Melissa, who wrote your letters?
So like John, I had my calculus AP teacher. That was a class that I really excelled in. I also, though, am math oriented, so it was something I was interested in studying. So I had my teacher in that class write a letter of rec. But on the other hand, the other teacher that wrote a letter of rec for me was my English AP teacher, who also was my academic decathlon coach. And that English AP was actually one of the classes I did worst in overall. So I think the message for that is, maybe a teacher may know you really well and it may not be your best class, but it was a class I really pushed myself in. And I felt the teacher really knew me, so she could speak more about my character than maybe about my grade. And then lastly, you do, I believe, on the Common App have an area where you can get an additional letter of rec. And I did do that. I had my advisor for my Girl Scout Gold Award write a letter of rec for me for that, because I thought she had a really good way to talk about my character. So I had that as well.
Okay, great. And Neil, who were your letter writers?
Yeah, so I basically wanted to show colleges that I wasn't solely focused on like one subject. Like I wasn't just a math student or just like a art student. I wanted to show them that I was pretty like well-rounded. So I got a letter from my AP US history teacher and then my AP calculus BC teacher. And I felt like this was really great because the AP US history teacher could speak to, I think, a little bit more of a little bit softer skills. So like writing, like class participation, teamwork, whereas the calculus BC teacher could really speak to my, like, I guess, my level of like inquisition and my, I guess, just like sheer ability to like, I guess, do math and like really just be a student. So I think those two teachers spoke to both my personality and my ability to excel in a classroom setting. So I thought that that was a really great way of capturing my personality as a whole. And then I also submitted an additional letter of recommendation from my Eagle Scout advisor for the Boy Scout process. And I felt like this was really great because it was able to speak. I felt like since I was so community service minded throughout high school, I needed a way to show colleges that I really did value, I guess, like my personality and my character. So I thought that the Eagle Scout advisor was able to speak to my personality and my ability to, I guess, be like a good human as well, in addition to like a strong student.
Definitely, yeah. So just to sum up, a lot of students ask their teachers, maybe their coaches, volunteer service coordinators, etc. But really asking a person who really knows you well is good. Ideally, you'd want to ask someone who knows you for a year or more. And generally, they write about a page about you, about your best qualities, about your strengths. And a lot of people, again, ask their favorite teachers. And right now, I just got an audience question, so I actually want to go to that. Someone asked, also, please, audience members, feel free to shoot us your questions. We'd love to answer them in this time. So an audience member asked, what kind of summer programs did you guys participate in? How did you guys spend your summer, and how do you think that made you stand out in your college apps? So obviously, all our panelists spent their summers helping in Taiwan or like curing cancer, right? So Melissa, what did you do during your summer?
Yeah, so I remember, I think the summer before my senior year of high school, I got really freaked out because a lot of my friends and stuff were like going to Africa on those programs, or doing the program at Harvard, doing the program at Yale, doing the program at UChicago. And I was working a minimum wage job. And so I thought that was going to set me back. And then I remember my dad talked to me and he's like, you know, like, this is actually a really good skill you have here. Like, you're working in the real world too, and you maybe aren't spending a big check to do some fancy program, but you can still learn things. And as I said before, that's actually what I wrote my college admissions essay on. So I really think it doesn't matter so much what you're doing over the summer. Yeah, if you can go to some great program at a university or get to travel, that's fantastic, and do it if you want to, but don't do it because you think that's going to set you apart. Do it because you're interested and you have that opportunity, because you can make anything you do over the summer meaningful if you're in the right mindset.
Very true, very true. And Neil, what did you do during your summers?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Melissa said. I almost feel like at one point, maybe like 10 years ago, doing these programs was very like special, and like you were very different than everyone. But nowadays it seems like everyone is going to some like college and like paying exorbitant amounts of money to like research with like professors. But the summer between my junior and senior year, I actually applied to some of these programs. I applied to ones at like MIT and Penn and got into the MIT one. But I got in, and then I realized, like, why am I doing this? Because I think at a certain point I started doing this because I was like, oh, it would be nice to like slap on a nice like college name on my application. But then I realized that these programs cost a lot of money, and like, what am I really getting out of it? So I actually took a step back and like thought about what can I do this summer that like other students haven't done, or what can I do to basically improve myself? And I figured that a skill that I lacked was writing. So I spent the summer before senior year working on college essays, obviously, but I actually also started doing independent research projects. And I started, it wasn't like science related. It was more like, it was like behavioral economics and just like general like social science. And I felt like doing these own projects, one, separated me from other people because I was doing it on my own, took my own initiative. And two, it just taught me how to be independent and really develop skills on my own. So I thought that, I guess, taking a step back from these programs and really thinking about what can you do during these summers to make yourself different than other people was really important. And yeah, I just wanted to echo what Melissa said. Don't just do these programs because they like look good on paper or anything, but if you really do feel like you can benefit from it and it would tie into your application story as a whole, then definitely go for it.
Definitely, yeah. So as our panelists mentioned, do something you're really interested in the summer, whether it's, whether you're doing something like behavioral economics research or social science research, whether maybe you're working at a job or something like that. So definitely like pick something that you're interested in. I also just want to ask the panelists really quickly, what was your most fun memory of college? It could be something really crazy or just really fun. I know I was pushed into the lake at one point. That was very fun, actually. So, John, do you have any like really favorite recollections of the past year in college?
I really liked the first and the last days. Those were great. I went swimming in Lake Michigan on the first day and swimming on the last day, and that was really fun. It's very cold, but it was a good experience, and I went with friends. And it was a good time to reflect on how much my life had changed since I last jumped in the lake. That was just something fun that I did.
That's cool. A lot of lake stories. How about you, Neil?
So, sorry, just to repeat one more time, what's the question? It's best memory of college?
Yeah, or fun, something fun that you remember.
Yeah, I'll touch on two. So, I'm like from California, and I've been here my whole life, and so I like honestly thought that like the Midwest has nothing to really offer besides Chicago. But then my really good friends convinced me to go on a trip to like Milwaukee and like the surrounding areas, and we actually had a really great time, and it was really just very relaxing trip. We like got to see like the nature and just saw how beautiful like the Midwest is. So that was one really great memory. And then two, there was a really big concert on our campus, and my friend and I didn't buy tickets, but we were able to just like sneak in somehow. So that was that was a really fun day. So yeah, college is really great and full of tons of opportunity.
Okay, cool. And what about you, Melissa?
Yeah, so I'm from California as well, and one of my best friends at UChicago is also from California. And I think my best memory, my first year, we had this huge blizzard on Super Bowl Sunday, and there was snow before, because snow starts in Chicago. Like, I remember first year it started on Halloween, but this was like the first real snow, and for some reason my friend and I, who's from California, we thought it was like fine enough to walk like all the way across campus to go to a restaurant, and like midway through we just like couldn't get through and ended up just like stuck in the snow for a while. So we still laugh about it because it was kind of our wake-up call to what the Midwest is really like.
Definitely, yeah. I'm also from California, and the first time it hailed slash snowed, I thought the world was ending. I wanted to go back to California right then and there. I called my mom and said, I want to transfer back, please take me back. But I got through the winter. I got through 2 winters, so it's all great. We actually have another question from the audience, and this one's towards Melissa. How did you organize your study abroad to London?
All right, so at UChicago, there's kind of 2 ways to do study abroad. University of Chicago has their own centers abroad where you like take a class taught by UChicago professors abroad for a quarter. And then there's another section called direct enrollment, and that's what I'll be doing. And what you do is you take classes at just a different university somewhere else in the world. In my case, it's going to be for the entire academic year. So I'll be at the London School of Economics. The London School of Economics actually happens to have a fairly well-known study abroad program called the General Course. So I know there's students from all sorts of universities, USC, Boston College, Cornell, Columbia, etc. So they have that, but also at the University of Chicago, they have smaller direct enrollment programs. For example, one of my friends is going to be at Oxford, and he's directly exchanging with someone. So there's all sorts of ways. The main thing for study abroad is that you need to make sure you're lined up so you can really go abroad. I know like my older siblings at the UCs weren't as lined up and weren't able to take advantage of that program. So when I started college, I knew I really wanted to study abroad, so I made sure I planned ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. A lot of colleges have study abroad programs or even volunteering abroad programs. And the general process is there's usually an application. You'll give in your transcript, you write a couple essays maybe, and you apply to a certain location. So for me, I went abroad for 10 weeks to Paris. Melissa is actually going abroad for a whole year to study economics in London. So there are many different study abroad programs depending on where the college already has connections or already has classrooms. If you have any more questions, please feel free to send them through the Q&A, and we'd be happy to answer them. But right now, I actually want to reintroduce our sponsor, Vinny Gupta, to talk a little bit more about UCEazy.
Thanks very much, Preethi. Give me 1 second to bring my slides up. Preethi, can you see the slide?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So for the audience, Preethi and the students are going to come back for a few more questions, but I just wanted to take a few minutes to just make a few recommendations from UCEazy perspective to the parents and students on the call. I promise to keep this short because I don't want to be in between you and the students. So the first thing that we have learned, and this is also from my personal journey as a parent of 2 college-bound students, that you need to start early with this process. We actually recommend that perhaps starting even as early as 7th grade is not a bad idea. It sounds like a stretch, but things like extracurriculars actually do count even as early as middle school. So start early, and very, very importantly, either yourself or through the help of a professional college admissions counselor, create a strategy to do things the right way. All too often, we see parents and families feeling highly stressed, highly overwhelmed because they don't have a strategy. They just talk to each other, then the rumor mill starts, and everybody just feels very pressured. So bring in a professional, either a UCEazy one or someone else. Now, as far as UCEazy is concerned, what you can do is that in terms of engaging with our professionals, our experts, there are several different options. You can go to our site, union.uceeazy.com, and you can select an initial consultation, which is an hour of video consultation with one of our counselors. There they can understand you, your student, your family, and together you can lay out a plan for the future. Now, typically, the average cost of these consultations is about $100, give or take. But if you, for the webinar attendees today, if you order by tomorrow night, that 60 minutes will become 90 minutes. The second option, if you are unsure about paying even $100, you can always schedule completely free 30-minute session by going again to the same site and selecting getting acquainted. And here what will happen is that you spend 30 minutes video with an expert. You get to know what does it feel like to work with an expert. And the expert and you can get to know each other. And again, you can come up with a plan for future. Now, once you choose option 1 or 2, the other thing then is that as the next step, we recommend a block of hours based upon the different grades the student is in for continuing engagement with the expert. So this on the screen, you see the general recommendations that we have: fewer number of hours for current 8th and 9th graders and increasing hours as you move on, and plus higher hours for students who would be 12th graders in August. So as you can see, the scope of activities keeps increasing as you go. If you write to us, I'll be happy to have somebody in the team send you this slide over. The other thing is that please consider attending these free events. You can go to our site, uceeazy.com/events. We have a full schedule from all the way till July. Next week, for those of you who think you need financial aid, we have 2 very exciting speakers with tremendous experience talk about successful strategies for getting scholarships. So please try and attend that, pass the word around, because who knows who needs financial help. The fact is that average graduate, college graduate who graduated this year is walking out with a $37,000 student loan debt. And nationally, our debt is 1.3 trillion. Huge, huge problem. So try and join next week. Maybe you'll get ideas about some free scholarships. And lastly, for those of you who work outside your home, if you want to have one of our experts come in and do a workshop at your site, please contact us. We'll be happy to do that. Okay, and lastly, while Preethi and the student answer more questions, we're going to fire up a poll. Please do respond to that. Thanks very much, Preethi. Back to you.
Great, thank you. And audience members, I just want to remind you one more time, if you have any more questions, feel free to shoot them over in the last part of our webinar. We'd be happy to answer them. But right now, we'll go back to our scheduled questions. I just wanted to ask all of the panelists, what was the biggest challenge transitioning from high school to college? I know we hear a lot of things like UChicago is where fun goes to die, and a lot of college coursework is really challenging. So I just wanted to ask about your experiences with that, starting with John.
Sure. So there are some interesting things with the transition. It's hard for a lot of students to leave their parents and families, and it was hard on me leaving my family. I'm very close with them. So I made sure to call them all at least twice a week, and that was really nice. Another thing is a lot of students aren't used to the amount of freedom that they may or may not have had in high school. So some students I've seen have freedom thrust upon them and go wild. So maybe sort of let your child decide what he or she wants to do with their summer in between senior year in college to lessen that transition. That was a really good thing that my parents did for me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, fun story. Some of my friends had to do laundry for the first time, so that was interesting to watch them do that. But Melissa, so how was the transition like for you?
Is it me? Yeah. So I think one of the hard things for me, UChicago was my top school, and I think when you guys get accepted to your colleges, you realize there's a lot of fanfare that comes in with your acceptance. I know at UChicago we get like lots of gifts mailed to us, like scarves and letters and all sorts of things, and you kind of get this picture painted that college is going to be the most perfect time of your life. And it is totally great, and I love UChicago, and it's the best decision I've ever made. But the transition is hard. For me, academically, it wasn't so hard, but definitely leaving my family in California, I was really, really close with my high school friends, and leaving them and having to make new friends is hard. So I think when you do go to college, know that it's going to be hard, but it's also going to be great. There's just maybe bumps in the road, but yeah.
Thank you. And what about you, Neil?
Yeah, I'll touch on, I guess, the academics of college. So high school was difficult, but it's nothing like college, because high school you have a lot of second chances, teachers have a lot of makeup assignments, and you have like 10 tests a semester. But in college you have two tests every 10 weeks, and each of those tests make up like half of your grade. So one bad test can really send you spiraling down. And so to excel in college, you need to be able to work without your parents pushing you, because they won't be there to tell you when to study, and you really have to be able to reach out to your professors, go to office hours. So I'd say the biggest thing is just learning how to take control of your own education without your parents' help, and learning how to, I guess, create your own study schedules and really keep yourself in check, because with so much free time and freedom, it's easy to lose sight of why you're really in college.
Definitely, yeah, thank you. So as Melissa mentioned, the next 4 years of a student's life in college can be some of the best years of their life and the most fun. But as John and Neil mentioned, it's definitely very challenging, because you have a lot of freedom and you have to discipline yourself to study a certain way or go to office hours. You'll have to build your own schedule. And so that's a really important piece of the transition to remember. You're coming from a very really like segmented schedule, taking 6 to 8 classes a day. Coming to college, maybe you're taking 1 class a day. Maybe you have Fridays, you have no class at all. So coming to college is a big transition, but definitely reaching out for help early on is a great way to help you structure that and figure out how to get discipline. So with that, I actually want to introduce our last question, unless any of, oh, actually no, I see an audience Q&A. What kinds of AP classes did you guys take in high school, and did they help in choosing your major? Okay, sure, yeah. John, do you want to start us off?
I was fortunate that my high school offered a lot of APs, so a lot. Let's see, like calculus, AV, and BC, AP Chem, AP Physics, AP Bio, AP US History, AP English, AP Macroeconomics. Can't remember all the rest, but there were 10 total. Basically, I just took the top level of whatever classes I could to show interest and to really differentiate. And it ended up giving me a large knowledge base, and I feel pretty well-rounded because of it. I highly recommend taking an AP class whenever you can. It's really material that is valuable for later life and for your edification in general. Even if you're not necessarily super interested in history, you won't regret taking the AP US History. So.
Great. And what about you, Melissa?
Yeah, I think like John, and I think like most students at the University of Chicago and top universities, I think I took just about every AP out there. But if you aren't, and if you do want to compete at these, top schools, it is kind of not necessary, but it's almost expected that you take those sorts of classes. But maybe if you aren't looking at these kinds of schools, I know one of my friends from high school, she goes to the University of Denver, so good school, yeah. And she took a few AP classes, and I remember I was in AP Spanish and AP Micro and Macroeconomics with her, and she loved AP Spanish, and that was great. And she's a Spanish minor in college, but she hated economics. I had to help her all the time. She just didn't get it. And after first year, we were meeting up over the summer, and she told me she's actually an economics major now. So I think maybe she got the exposure to like the big shock in high school, which was good. So then when she had to take an economics class in college, she actually did quite well in it because she's already had that shock. So it's kind of surprising. One of her AP classes was something she's always been interested in. Another one she didn't do so great, but now she's actually really good at. Yeah.
That's awesome. And how about you, Neil?
Yeah, I took a lot of AP classes, so I don't really like remember which ones, but I'd say like the biggest takeaway from AP classes is I don't think AP classes are a good indication of college majors. So I guess if I look at like the Q&A, the question is, did it help you choose your major? Not really, because I enjoyed AP US History the most out of any AP that I took, but I'm an economics major, and I thought AP Macroeconomics is nothing like the economics they teach you in college. So I would say that take AP classes to show colleges that you're competent and like you can excel in like a supposedly like high level class, and also take those classes to show that you're willing, because a lot of colleges want to see that you're like a thinker, so you can do well in almost any kind of class, but they don't want to see that you're only good at math or something. So I think take APs to, I guess, like beef up like your like college application, but I wouldn't really use APs as a gauge for choosing your major.
Thank you. Yeah, so as our panelist said, a lot of schools offer a ton of AP classes. They are graded higher on a GPA scale, I think a 5.0, so they're very popular to take because they're challenging. They show colleges that you're trying to challenge yourself and you're capable of taking this hard coursework that will transition to college coursework. That being said, my school actually offered IB classes, International Baccalaureate. I took the AP tests because you're allowed to just pay for and take the AP tests. So a lot of popular ones, and then the ones I took bio, chem, physics, calc, ABC. A lot of people take languages. I took Spanish. My friends took Chinese, Japanese, etc. So just depending on what you're interested in, go ahead and take them. What classes are offered, go ahead and take them. And in terms of choosing majors, it's usually to give like a pretty broad overview of different classes. I mean, for me, I did take the economics one, I took bio, and I really liked those. But then again, it just depends. Some people will completely change their majors and change their mind. So I don't know if there's a direct correlation. So with that, I actually want to close out our webinar with some final closing statements from our panelists. I just wanted to ask them if they could look back and go back and talk to their younger selves, what is the one piece of advice they would give themselves? And let's start off with Neil.
Yeah, I think Melissa and John are probably going to touch on this, but really like have faith in the process and trust that wherever you go, you're like meant to be there. It's really easy to compare yourself to other people, but just work as hard as you can. And like, I think like everything will align and you'll end up where you're meant to be. And it's really, I think it's easy for me to say this now, but college is college wherever you go. And it is easy to get caught up in like the rankings, but you'll have fun no matter where you go, and it'll be like the best 4 years of your life. So just work as hard as you can, but don't stress out about stuff you have no control over.
Great, thank you. And John?
Yeah, I'd say Neil's advice about working hard is important. Work hard in high school. Plan your summers out also. That's something I wish I had taken initiative more in high school to do. And I think that's really valuable.
Great, thanks. And how about you, Melissa, final statements?
Yeah, definitely. Like both Neil and John were saying, have faith in the process. Of course, do everything in your control to make the process turn out as you can. So work hard, get the help you need in the areas that you need help. But know wherever you end up is going to be the right place. I mean, I'm at UChicago. That was my first choice, but some of my best friends had a different dream school, and they're at UChicago, and they know that's the place they need to be. So it'll work out. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And as Melissa said, have faith in the process. You'll end up where you're meant to be, and you'll please work hard, as John said, but also don't stress out, as Neil mentioned. It's just a combination of things. It'll feel like this is the biggest decision in your life right now, and it is, and it does matter a lot. But also know that wherever you end up, you can definitely be successful. And with that, I will actually go back to our sponsor, Gupta, but it was a pleasure moderating for you all. If you have any further questions, please feel free to send them to the Q&A. And right now, I'll go back to Vinny. Thank you.
Well, Preethi, Neil, Melissa, and John, thank you so much for taking time, especially during your summer break, to help out future applicants and their parents. I know that it's not possible for them to speak up given the technology, but I do hope that they are thankful to you guys for taking the time and sharing your experiences. To the audience, thank you again for joining our webinars. We do hope that these are valuable in terms of providing guidance to you, and also, most importantly, to our vision, help reduce the stress that families face during college admissions process. So thank you for joining. Hopefully we will see you in the future. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and the rest of your week. Thank you, Preethi and team again. Appreciate it. Bye for now.